You bet.
Sandra, the assassination attempt against former President Trump leading to widespread calls to lower the temperature around political debate.
There's no figure in American history, at least in the modern era, maybe since Lincoln, who's been so vilified and really persecuted by media and, Hollywood elites, political figures, even the legal system. And when the message goes out constantly that the election of Donald Trump would be a threat to democracy and that the republic would end, I mean, it heats up the environment. We cannot do that. It's simply not true.
House Majority Leader Steve Scalise is a survivor of political violence. He was shot at a congressional baseball game practice back in 2017, and he joins us now. We'll get to the politics in a second, Congressman, but I wanted to ask about the investigation, because many people are interested in where this is going. The person who tried to kill you was a left-wing activist with a history of domestic violence. That seemed to fit with the actions that he took that day. But this person who nearly killed former President Trump, he's 20 years old, just graduated high school, works as a dietary aide at a nursing home, apparently was good at math. He won an award. He was described by friends as a loner and was bullied all the time. Other than that, we know very little about him.
Yeah, well, John and Sandra, good to be with you. And I would imagine in the days ahead, we're going to learn a lot more. So, we're still getting even more information in these last few hours. So, we're going to be doing our own investigation. I talked to Chairman Jamie Comer with the House Oversight Committee this morning. Next Monday, they're going to be having a hearing with Secret Service, FBI, all the agencies involved, to start answering some of the serious questions that you and others and all of us have that we still haven't heard any really good answers on. And then as we do that, we'll hopefully get more information about what might have been behind it. There is no motivation that justifies what he tried to do. He tried to kill former president and maybe future president of the United States. There's just no place for that in America. And, how he came that close to being able to carry that out is surely an area of questioning I have, as well as others as well.
Congressman, great to have you on. Hope you're doing well. We just heard the update from U.S. Secret Service a moment ago. Yet they would not take any questions on the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. They would only talk about the upcoming convention. And the Secret Service said at that briefing, we are confident in security plans for the Republican National Convention. In fact, the Secret Service went on to say there will be no changes or updates to their security plans after what happened. You're around the Secret Service a lot. We saw them surround the president and fulfill their duty there. Do you have confidence that they can protect, as the election season goes on, these candidates and the president and former president?
Well, those are some of the questions we have in terms of resources. We heard some things may have been farmed out yesterday to other law enforcement agencies that Secret Service should have carried out, checking on the rooftop when you hear these reports. And I've seen some of the video of people talking about that they were identifying the shooter on the roof, crawling towards the roof with the gun on his back. And they pointed it out to law enforcement and nothing happened until he started firing shots. I mean, that's unacceptable, and so, this discussion about how big the soft perimeter will be, all of that is an ongoing discussion. I don't think it's finalized. But we have a lot of additional questions that they're going to have to answer. They're ultimately going to have to answer those questions. And if people need to be held accountable, that's got to happen, too, because you can't have something like this almost happen. I mean, it would have been a tragedy that this country hasn't seen in maybe generations. And it just should have never happened. It should have never gotten that close. And it can't happen again. And that's what we need to prevent.
In the incident that nearly took your life, Congressman, it was a small public ball field in Arlington. There was a small Capitol Police detail that was there. The gunman drove up and from a covered position started opening fire. And heroically, the Capitol Police officers managed to take him down. But in a situation like we had yesterday, the place is crawling with Secret Service. It's crawling with Secret Service CAT teams. Local police are all over the place. And yet, the building that was the very closest structure to where Donald Trump was speaking, just 400 feet away, was left uncovered somehow. I mean, that just defies everything that you've ever learned or observed about these presidential or campaign events.
Yeah, it's inexcusable. I mean, we're not talking about in the middle of New York City where every building around you is a high rise, where every floor might have people on it. I mean, this is a building, the nearest building that was outside of the perimeter that was secured by MAGs. This building was just right there. And again, there were people that said they alerted authorities before the shooting to the shooter crawling towards the perch that he used to ultimately try to take out President Trump and killed that poor gentleman that was there just to see a political rally and injured others. So these are the kind of questions that we have. They have to be answered. Somebody on the ground was responsible for making sure that that didn't happen, and they failed miserably, and we're going to get to the bottom of this.
Well, House Women Committee says a source from the committee is telling Fox News that Chairman Mark Green had a call with the Director of Secret Service, Director Cheadle, today. The committee's going to be holding a majority member briefing with Cheadle tomorrow. So we'll see where they get with all of this. And Congressman, we appreciate you being able to join us today.
Thanks. Great to be back with you. And, God bless America. God bless President Trump. And pray for the family of the man who we lost.